So when I was a young teenager, I became a neo-Nazi. Later, a neo-Nazi leader. It's important for me to say that I grew up in a very safe family. It was a good upbringing with good parents. But there was a few key events in my life that made me a neo-Nazi. And that was not the classical risk factors that we often see with people who become extremists. For me, it all started when I went to high school. I was a bit insecure. And every second year in Norway, there are high school elections. It's the general political parties who participate. And the anti-immigration party in Norway did very good at my school. Kids would wear these buttons that said Norway for Norwegians. So I started wearing one of those. And then I got a lot of friends, new friends. So it was a sense of belonging to something. Also, I had a great love of filmmaking, Hollywood. And I was shown a movie called Birth of a Nation, which was the very first Hollywood blockbuster. The point of this movie was to show me how it was technically made back in the old days. But the message of the movie is what seduced me. Ku Klux Klan, KKK, being the heroes in the movie, defending white women and children from rape and murder. So I bought that message, no question asked. And also, I was at that age where I would go to the youth disco in town, and we defended that disco. So when visitors from other towns came, we would argue with them and sometimes fight with them. We didn't want them there. We didn't want any competition regarding our girls from our town. But also there was a refugee center north in town, and they had teenagers too, and they wanted to have fun. So they came into town also. And of course, we got in fights with them as well. That was kind of my first meeting with immigrants over fists. You also had an anarchist group established in town. They called themselves Syra, or acid on English. They occupied a house, and I didn't like that because it didn't belong to them. But also they had a very positive, romantic, promotional view on drugs. And I had seen firsthand what drugs could do to a very dear friend of mine. So I did not like that view of drugs either that they had. So we got in fights with them as well. There was an established neo-Nazi group in a town nearby mine. Sometimes they would come into town too. And I did well at school. I was a good student. I knew my history. I knew what the Germans and the Nazis did during World War II, and I didn't like that either. I didn't like Nazis. But there is this saying, your enemy's enemy become your friend. And the Nazis, they would also fight the anarchists, so we would join them. And together, we got rid of them, eventually. And then, of course, we were invited to a victory party. And I was introduced once again to the Ku Klux Klan via a magazine. I actually sent them an email, or actually a letter, I mean. It was no internet at the time. So I got a box in the mail a few weeks later, and it was my dad who opened it. And he got very, very, very angry, so I had to get a new box. And again, I was seduced by the message, and eventually I applied for membership in the Ku Klux Klan. But they denied because I was too young. But I could join the KK Kids, which was their children's organization. And this lifestyle of mine, being a racist, very aggressive, getting in fights, of course got me into jail. And in jail, I didn't get to see TV or listen to radio at that time. But I got a lot of books: Mein Kampf, White Power, Might is Right, Revolution by Number 14, Hunter, Turner Diaries. These are books that has inspired people to do horrible things like the Oklahoma City bombing in America. And when I was released from jail, I kind of had brainwashed myself. We were a tight group of 5 in my city, in our organization, and we had a support group around us. Also, I enjoyed my position as a leader there. And that was kind of addictive too, like drugs in a way. And just to describe to you guys how much power I actually had, we were out walking one night, and I had a pistol in my pocket, a Glock, and I saw an anti-fascist activist down an alleyway. So I told my friend, I want actually to test his commitment and loyalty to the cause. So I gave him my pistol, and I told him, go down, shoot that guy in the head. And he did. He went down, he pulled the gun at him, and he pulled the trigger. But it only said click. And then he turned around, surprised, and he said, Tom, there was no bullet in this piece. And I said, yeah, you passed the test with flying colors. Of course, this kind of life got me back in jail. And I actually spent 4.5 years in jail. When I was released, I was confused because it was a lot of internal fighting in the movement, and I was kind of sick and tired of that. So I had an invitation to South Africa because there was a black president, Nelson Mandela, and they said there would be a civil war, a race war. So I jumped on the plane to South Africa in September of '97, and I actually had a pretty good time there for a little while. But then one evening, I was playing music at a right-wing extremist party, and it was an anti-Jewish song. And one of the officers in that organization didn't like that, so he pulled a pistol at me. And he was drunk, and he pushed me off the bar stool, and he screamed at me, "You do not insult the chosen people of God. The Jews are not the enemy, the blacks are." So I was quite confused, and I wasn't very happy staying there with a person who just pulled a gun at me. So I went to Joburg, and I lied. I said that I was going to meet the KKK there. I did that too, but that was not the reason why I went. I just went to clear my head and get drunk. And getting drunk in Johannesburg at that time was not a very smart thing, especially if you didn't have any clear thoughts. So we went downtown, and this is like where it started. I had a few events down there that eventually actually would get me out of the movement. The first was, of course, to be threatened by my own people. So we went downtown, very drunk, and it's again my lifestyle who would always get me into these impossible situations. I turned a corner, and I saw 5 or 6 black South Africans. And before I could turn around, one of them pulled a gun at me. And then, of course, covered with swastikas, because I didn't hide who I was, I thought, okay, this time it's over. He's going to shoot me. So I looked past the barrel of his gun, and I looked him in the eyes, and I told him, I hope you don't shoot me, because I would love to see the rest of your beautiful country. And for some reason, he didn't shoot me. He just put his pistol in his pocket, and he left. So I went back to the hostel, and of course, I guess that you think that now Tom went home to rethink his life. But of course, I didn't. I'm a slow learner. So I continued drinking, and I lost my wallet. And it was no internet, so I had to wait for a check coming all the way from Norway. Then this other amazing thing happened to me. And this time I wasn't threatened by a gun. But I was actually sitting in a bar one evening, and without money, I couldn't buy food. I couldn't do anything. I got breakfast at the hostel, but that's it. So this guy bought me a beer. And I turned around to see who this guy was, to say thank you. And I looked around, and the guy was black. So I turned to show him my swastika t-shirt, and the guy replied, "Cheers, man." And then, of course, I understood. He was an undercover agent from the South African Intelligence Service there to poison me with a beer. It would be poison in the beer. So, that was my logic. So I was about to snap, actually, but the bartender knew me by then, and, he said, "Relax, Tom, relax. The young guy just want to buy you a beer." So I accepted the beer, and another one, and then I don't remember much more, and I woke up the next morning, and I was so ashamed. I was horrified that I actually got drunk with a black man. I felt dirty. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. But then again, I remember that the guy was friendly. He was from Zambia. He had 2 kids, a wife, and he was working for Vodafone in Johannesburg. And the afternoon came, and I was very hungry, and he came in the door, and he saw me, and he said, "Tom, are you hungry?" "Yes," I said. And no, why did I say that, And then I ended up making dinner with him. And the guy was from Zambia, so we were like kind of odd couple, me, the Nazi, and the Zambian guy making food together. And people were looking at us, and I actually understand why. And this relationship kept on going for a week, and then he had to leave, and I got money, and I went back to Norway, long story short. I'm sorry to say that I don't remember his name. I don't have any contact information. I wish I would have met him. But anyway, a New Year's party went bad. I hit somebody with a baseball bat, and I went back to jail. But this was actually a good thing for me. Not hitting the guy with a baseball bat, luckily he survived, but me going to jail alone, getting some time to think. And in jail, there was a chef. He approached me. He had seen this movie, American History X. Anybody here seen it? Not too many. Go and see it. It's actually a very, very good movie, especially at this time and age. So he came back one day, we were eating breakfast, and he looked at me and he said, "Tom." And I didn't know that this was a question from the movie. But he said, "Tom, when you think about your life, what good has it done for you and your family that you became a neo-Nazi?" And that was actually the first time I sat down and started thinking about that. What good has this decision of mine been? And man, it wasn't good. I'd spent like 4.5 years in jail. My life was a mess. I was 26 years old. I only owned a few T-shirts with swastikas on them. Life weren't very good. And the experiences I had in South Africa, the officer at the prison who made me think together with the chef, asking me critical questions, this all summed up eventually. And one day I phoned my parents. I think I'd been like 6 months in custody by then. And I phoned my parents and I told them, "Listen, I'm actually done with this." And this was the first time I said that to my parents, because I had been a pretty proud Nazi up to then. And my mother started crying, and I was eventually released. The warden at the jail, he followed me out, and he gave me a beer hug when I was released and wished me the very best of luck. Me and my father, we actually had a barbecue one evening, and we would burn all my Nazi stuff. And it's hard to describe the feeling, but just imagine walking around with a backpack weighing 150 kilos or something, and then you suddenly take it off. It's an amazing feeling. And for me, to be free of that hate, it was just an amazing opportunity. And if you go forward a little bit then, I did a master degree in social work. I'm happily married with the very best wife possible in the galaxy. I have 2 boys. I work now as a crime prevention coordinator, and I work on both a regional level and an international level when it comes to preventing violent extremism. So I believe that these encounters that I had with these people, they were like some kind of guardian angels that showed up at the right moment. And it makes me believe that extremists, they might have defense against a long way of exit programs that they don't want to take part in, but love and compassion, to show people love and compassion, not even an extremist has any defense against that. And that's my message to you. Show people a lot of love, compassion, inclusion, and I think we will go a long way. Thank you. Thank you. Now I get embarrassed. Thank you.